The storm had torn through the galaxy like a beast on a hunt, leaving a trail of destruction across the stars. Marcus sat in the cockpit of his small, barely functioning ship, gripping the controls. He had been navigating the outer rim of the universe, trying to avoid a band of space pirates when the storm had caught him off guard. Now, with his ship shaking violently in the storm's grip, there was nothing left to do but hold on and pray. The winds of the storm howled through the thin walls of the ship, sending sparks flying from the control panels. Marcus cursed under his breath as the lights flickered. His heart raced in his chest, knowing the damage was beyond repair. This was the end, he thought. It wasn't the way he expected to go out. Not in a storm like this, alone, unprepared. He had always imagined that when the end came, it would be something spectacular, something that would leave a mark on the universe. Instead, it felt like being swallowed whole by the void, insignificant and powerless. He couldn't even feel the pride of fighting back. Suddenly, with a sickening jolt, his ship was torn from its course, ripped from the storm's grip by some unseen force. The darkness outside the cockpit was blinding, and the howling winds ceased in an instant, replaced by the deafening roar of the atmosphere. "Hold on," Marcus muttered to himself, eyes wide in panic as his ship plummeted toward the planet below. The ship's nose dipped forward, and he felt his stomach drop as it spiraled toward the surface. He had no idea what planet he was heading toward, but he knew one thing for sure. He wouldn't survive the crash if he didn't take control. Frantically, he twisted the steering controls, trying to level the ship, but it was useless. The storm's force had crippled every system. Nothing responded. With a final crash, the world outside went dark. When Marcus woke up, the world around him was still spinning. His head throbbed as he groggily tried to move, his body pinned beneath something heavy. His eyes fluttered open, and the blinding light of a foreign sky stung his vision. He gasped for breath, coughing as he tried to push himself free. His heart raced, his body aching as he pushed against the wreckage of the ship. It was a miracle he was alive, but as he struggled to free himself, he realized there was no time to celebrate. His ship had crashed on an unfamiliar planet, and if he didn't get out of there fast, he would be a sitting target for whatever dangers lurked in the alien landscape. With a grunt, he shoved a large piece of debris off his chest and crawled toward the wreckage's broken hull. His hands were shaking as he pulled himself free, his feet stumbling as they hit the rocky ground. He wasn't sure how far he had fallen, but the sky above was different from anything he had seen before. The stars were brighter, the air thicker, and the ground beneath his feet felt strange. Despite the pain, he forced himself to his feet, surveying his surroundings. The land stretched out before him, barren and wild, the dust swirling in the wind. The sky was a strange shade of orange, and there was no sign of life in the area. It was eerily quiet, and that made Marcus uneasy. This wasn't the kind of place to crash and survive. Taking a deep breath, he reached for his emergency pack, which had miraculously stayed intact in the crash. His supplies were minimal, just enough to survive for a few days, if he was lucky. But there was no time to waste. He needed to find shelter, or he'd never make it through the night. He began walking, his steps slow and deliberate, as he scanned the horizon for any signs of civilization. His mind raced, trying to calculate his next move. The crash had left him with little hope, but the survival instincts drilled into him through years of training were kicking in. Then, just as he began to lose hope, he heard it. A faint voice, a whisper carried on the wind. "Help!" Marcus froze, his heart racing. He had heard it clearly. A voice. But where was it coming from? It sounded weak, almost like a cry for help. He turned in the direction of the sound, scanning the horizon. There was nothing there, but the voice called again, louder this time. "Help!" "Please." Without thinking, Marcus began to run, his legs aching with every step. The voice led him deeper into the rocky terrain, and he pushed on, determined to find the source. He had to help. That was all that mattered. Whoever was out there, he couldn't leave them to die alone. The terrain grew more treacherous as he moved, but the voice was persistent, drawing him forward like a beacon in the dark. Eventually, he stumbled upon a small clearing. The trees here were different from anything he had seen before, tall and twisting, with leaves that shimmered in the strange orange light of the planet. And then he saw her. Lying among the wreckage of what looked like a small, crashed ship was an alien woman. Her body was tangled in the debris, and she was barely moving. Her skin was a smooth, shimmering silver, her hair long and flowing like liquid. And her eyes glowed a brilliant shade of blue that matched the sky above. She was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen, but there was no time to be awestruck. She needed help. Without hesitation, he rushed to her side, kneeling beside her and lifting the debris off her fragile form. She was light, almost weightless, and he could feel the warmth of her skin as he carefully moved the rocks and metal away from her body. Her breathing was shallow and her eyes fluttered weakly. Marcus said softly, trying to rouse her. "Are you okay? Can you hear me?" She opened her eyes, locking onto him with an intensity that startled him. There was something in her gaze, something he couldn't quite place, but it was as if she knew more about him than he could ever understand. Her lips parted, and she whispered in a voice like soft music. "You saved me." Marcus blinked, momentarily stunned. He had just assumed she was the one who needed saving. She was the one trapped, not him. Yet she spoke as if he had somehow been the one to need her help.
"What do you mean?"
Marcus asked, his voice rough.
"You were trapped, not me."
"I saved you." She smiled faintly, her lips curving into a mysterious, knowing expression.
"No, it is you who is being saved." Marcus felt a shiver run down his spine.
He didn't know what she meant, but something about her presence was both calming and unnerving. As the silence stretched between them, Marcus realized he had no idea what was going on. He was no hero, just a man who had survived a crash. But in that moment, it felt as though he had stumbled into a much larger story than he could have ever imagined. "Who are you?" Marcus asked, his voice quiet. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering her strength. When she opened them again, there was a new determination in her gaze. "My name is Lyra," she said softly, "and you have been chosen." Marcus furrowed his brow. "For what?" The question lingered in the air between them. But before he could ask, Lyra seemed to collapse back into unconsciousness. With urgency, Marcus scooped her up in his arms, carrying her toward what he hoped was safety. The landscape stretched on before him, a barren wasteland of unknowns. And yet, something in his gut told him that the strange woman in his arms was the key to everything. Everything he had been running from. Everything he had unknowingly been drawn to. The journey ahead would be unlike anything he had ever imagined, and he couldn't shake the feeling that his fate was somehow tied to hers. He only hoped he was strong enough to face whatever came next. Marcus's arms ached from carrying Lyra. The long, rocky path stretched ahead of him, the barren terrain offering little to no sign of life. His legs were sore from the struggle to make progress across the unyielding ground, and his chest heaved as he fought for breath. The weight of Lyra's unconscious form in his arms only made the task harder, but he couldn't stop. He had to get her to safety. He had no idea where he was going. The land seemed endless, stretching far beyond the horizon, the sun casting strange golden light over everything. There was no sign of civilization, no structures or signs of any kind of life. Yet the voice in his mind told him that he was doing the right thing, that he had to keep moving, that Lyra was more important than anything else. Every step seemed like an eternity, but he refused to stop. The memory of her eyes, glowing with an otherworldly light, haunted him. Those eyes were filled with something he couldn't understand, something that made him feel both powerful and insignificant at the same time. The wind howled around them, carrying the faint scent of something sweet and unfamiliar. Marcus's instincts told him to be cautious, but his concern for Lyra outweighed all else. She had saved him after all. The way she had opened her eyes and spoken to him, it was as if she had known him, as if their meeting had been planned long before the crash. But how? He hadn't known she existed until that moment. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than simple chance. After what felt like hours, he finally saw a break in the rocky landscape. It wasn't much, just a small area of dirt and sparse vegetation. But it was better than nothing. Carefully, he lowered Lyra to the ground, her body still limp in his arms. Her breathing was shallow, but at least it was steady. He couldn't afford to rest for long. He quickly pulled out the emergency supplies from his pack and set up a small shelter using the tarp and materials he had. It wasn't much, but it would protect them from the elements for a while. He knew it wouldn't last long. The storm might come back, and the planet's unknown wildlife could pose a threat. But for now, it was enough. He had to focus on Lyra. Sitting beside her, Marcus watched the stars begin to appear in the sky, the distant twinkling lights offering him a moment of peace. His thoughts were a swirl of questions, confusion, and uncertainty. Who was she? Why had she been so calm when he found her? She had seemed different from any human he had ever known. There was something powerful about her, something that didn't quite belong on this planet. Marcus shook his head. He was overthinking it. He needed to stay focused. He was a survivor, not a thinker. Right now, all that mattered was keeping Lyra alive. He placed a hand on her forehead, gently brushing a lock of her shimmering hair away from her face. Her skin was warm, but she was still unconscious. It was then that he noticed the strange markings on her skin. Faint lines, like glowing tattoos running across her arms and neck. They seemed to pulse softly, as if they were alive, and it made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. His mind raced, trying to make sense of everything. What had happened to her? Why was she marked like that? And why had she said that? He was the one being saved. Lyra shifted slightly in her sleep, her eyes flickering behind closed lids. Marcus leaned closer, his breath catching in his throat as he waited for her to awaken. It was only a matter of time before she regained consciousness, and he needed answers. He couldn't help but wonder if she'd been hiding something from him. Minutes later, her eyelids fluttered open. Her gaze immediately locked onto his, and for a moment, Marcus felt as if time had stopped. There was a quiet intensity in her eyes, a depth that seemed to look beyond him, as though she were seeing into his very soul. "You're awake," Marcus said, his voice soft and cautious. Lyra didn't respond right away. She simply stared at him, studying him with an expression that felt both unfamiliar and strangely familiar at the same time. After a long pause, she finally spoke, her voice as quiet as a whisper. "Where am I?" Marcus took a deep breath, relieved that she was speaking. "You're safe, for now," he said, trying to sound reassuring. "We crashed on this planet. I'm not sure where exactly, but I'm trying to get us somewhere safer." Lyra slowly sat up, her movements graceful despite the exhaustion that still clung to her. Her eyes scanned the area, taking in the barren landscape. She seemed to be deep in thought, her brow furrowed as if she were considering something important. "I don't know why I'm here," she murmured. "But I am grateful you found me." Marcus frowned. "What do you mean?" "You've been through something that isn't just a crash." Lyra's eyes met his again, and this time there was a hint of something more, something ancient, something wise. "I am not from here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was sent." Marcus leaned in closer, his curiosity growing. "Sent by who?" Lyra hesitated, as if searching for the right words. "I cannot explain it fully yet." "Not all at once. But you were chosen, Marcus. Chosen to help me. You're more important than you realize." The words hit Marcus like a thunderclap. He blinked, struggling to understand what she was saying.
What do you mean, I'm important? I'm just some guy who crashed his ship.
I'm no one special. Lyra shook her head, her eyes softening.
You don't know yet, but you will.
I will explain it to you when the time is right. For now, you must trust me. We don't have much time. Marcus felt a chill crawl up his spine. Something about the way she spoke, the way she looked at him, made him feel like a part of something much bigger. What are we up against? He asked, his voice shaking slightly. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, gathering her thoughts before speaking again.
There are others. Forces that will stop at nothing to prevent the knowledge I carry from reaching the right hands. Your hands.
Marcus's mind raced. What knowledge?
What are you talking about? Lyra placed a hand on his arm, her touch surprisingly gentle despite her earlier strength. There is a weapon, Marcus.
A weapon that could change the fate of everything.
It lies within you.
Marcus blinked, stunned by her words. Inside me? I don't understand. You will, she said softly. But for now, we must move quickly. The longer we stay here, the more we are at risk. Marcus had no idea what she was talking about. He didn't understand any of it. Not the weapon, not the choice, not the mysterious power that she seemed to think he possessed. But one thing was clear. His life had just been flipped, upside down. He wasn't just a man stranded on an alien planet anymore. He was part of something much bigger. And he had no choice but to trust Lyra, at least for now. Without another word, he helped her to her feet. The sky was dimming, the stars beginning to shine through the strange haze that hung over the planet. They had a long journey ahead of them, and Marcus had no idea where it would lead. But deep down, he knew it was the beginning of something life-altering. They had to survive, and together they would face whatever dangers this planet and the universe had in store for them. Marcus and Lyra walked through the night, their footsteps soft on the strange ground beneath them. The stars above sparkled brightly, each one shining with an intensity that Marcus had never seen before. The planet's twin moons cast an eerie pale light across the barren land, giving everything a surreal, dreamlike quality. Marcus glanced over at Lyra. She moved with a grace that seemed to defy the physical limitations of the planet. Her long silver hair shimmered in the moonlight, and her glowing skin seemed almost otherworldly. She had spoken little since their conversation earlier, and Marcus couldn't help but wonder what else she was hiding. There was so much she hadn't told him, so many things she alluded to but never fully explained. And yet, in the pit of his stomach, Marcus knew that this was bigger than anything he could have imagined. His eyes followed Lyra's movements, his mind still racing. He had been pulled into a strange, unknown world, one where the rules didn't seem to apply. How was it that a simple crash had led him to this moment? Why was Lyra so certain that he was chosen, that he was important? And what did she mean by the weapon that lay within him? The questions piled on top of each other, and he couldn't shake the feeling that everything he thought he knew was crumbling away. "Where are we going?" Marcus asked, his voice breaking the silence. Lyra glanced back at him, her face soft and serene, as if she had already known he would ask. "We are heading to a place of safety, where we can be hidden for a time," she replied. "But you must understand, Marcus. The longer we stay in one place, the greater the danger." Marcus didn't fully understand the gravity of her words, but he felt them all the same. There was something ominous in her tone, something urgent in her steps as she quickened her pace. He followed, unsure of what to expect. There were so many unknowns ahead, and it was hard to wrap his mind around everything that had happened in such a short period of time. A part of him wanted to run, to turn back and forget all of it. But another part of him, a stronger part, knew he couldn't. Not with Lyra, not with whatever was chasing them. They walked for what seemed like hours, the landscape around them shifting with every step. The ground grew rockier, the sparse vegetation thickening into thorny bushes that Lyra expertly navigated. Marcus had to fight to keep up, stumbling over uneven ground and catching his breath, as his body ached from the crash and the long journey. Eventually, they reached a narrow canyon, its walls rising steeply on either side. It was dark here, the shadows deep and heavy, but Lyra seemed undeterred. She moved through the canyon like it was nothing, her steps light, her focus unwavering. Marcus, on the other hand, felt his heart race as he looked up at the towering cliffs. The air was colder now, and the silence felt oppressive. "This way," Lyra said, her voice barely a whisper as she turned a corner and led them deeper into the canyon. Marcus followed without question, knowing that she was the only one who knew where they were going. The canyon narrowed further as they moved along, and Marcus could feel the weight of the atmosphere pressing down on him. His instincts screamed at him to be cautious, but there was no turning back now. He had to trust her, even if he didn't fully understand what was happening. After a few more minutes, they reached a small, cave-like opening. Lyra paused in front of it, her eyes scanning the surroundings before she turned to Marcus. "We will rest here for a while," she said. "It is safer than moving through the night." Marcus nodded, grateful for the shelter. He followed her inside, and they both sat down on the cold, hard ground. The cave was small, but enough to provide some protection from the outside elements. Lyra sat cross-legged, her hands resting on her knees as she closed her eyes for a moment. Marcus watched her closely, his thoughts racing. He had so many questions, so many things he needed to know, but he didn't want to push her too hard. He had already seen that she was capable of incredible power, and yet she seemed almost fragile in moments like this, as if she was carrying a weight much greater than what he could see. "Lyra," Marcus began quietly, unsure of how to phrase his question. "What is all of this?" "Why me? I'm just a guy who crashed his ship. What makes me so important?" Lyra opened her eyes and looked at him, her gaze steady and filled with something he couldn't quite name. She took a deep breath before speaking. "You are important because you have the potential to change everything," she said, her voice calm but intense. "There is a power inside you, Marcus. It has always been there, waiting. It is not something you can see or touch, but it is a part of you, and I believe that it is what has brought us together." Marcus felt a chill creep up his spine. The words sounded too heavy, too much for him to grasp. "I don't understand."
"What power are you talking about? I'm just..."
"Me?" Lyra smiled faintly, her expression softening. "You have been trained by the universe itself, even if you don't realize it. The choices you've made, the path you've walked, they have led you to this moment." Marcus shook his head. "I don't get it."
"I've never done anything special. I'm not a soldier. I'm not a hero."
"I'm just a guy who ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time." Lyra reached out, her hand resting gently on his arm. "You underestimate yourself, Marcus. Your humanity, your strength, it is what makes you the key. You may not see it yet, but the universe has a way of shaping things, and you are meant to be part of this, to play a role in the balance of all things." Marcus sat in silence, trying to process her words. His mind raced, the weight of her statement sinking in. What did she mean? Was she talking about fate? Was it possible that the universe, or whatever force guided all of this, had been planning this all along? Before he could say anything more, a faint rumble echoed through the canyon. Lyra's expression darkened, her eyes flicking toward the entrance of the cave. "We must move," she said quickly, her tone urgent. "They have found us." Marcus's heart pounded in his chest.
"Who? Who's found us?" Lyra didn't answer, instead getting to her feet and motioning for him to follow. "There is no time."
"Come." With fear mounting in his chest, Marcus stood and followed her, stepping out into the cold night once more. The rumble grew louder, and he could feel the ground trembling beneath his feet. It was as if something enormous was moving, something that had the power to shake the earth itself. "Who are they?" Marcus asked again, his voice tight with panic. "The ones who will stop at nothing to ensure that the weapon stays hidden," Lyra replied, her voice low but filled with an unshakable resolve. "They know we're here and they'll come for us. We need to reach the place where we can unlock the secrets of your power. Only then can we stop them." Marcus didn't understand fully, but he knew one thing. The danger was real. The threat was closing in on them, and they had to keep moving, or they wouldn't make it. The ground trembled again, and this time, the noise was unmistakable. Something was charging toward them, and it was fast. Whatever it wasn't something they could outrun. Lyra glanced at Marcus, her eyes filled with determination. "Stay close," she said, "and don't let go."
We're not alone in this fight.
As they sprinted through the canyon, Marcus felt the weight of her words. The universe had chosen him for something bigger than he could comprehend, but whether he was ready for it, whether he could live up to it, that remained to be seen. The ground continued to shake beneath Marcus's feet as they ran through the canyon. The rumbling noise grew louder, closer, and it sent a cold shiver through his spine. Every instinct he had screamed at him to stop, to find cover, but there was no time. Lyra moved ahead, her long silver hair trailing behind her like a comet's tail, her pace steady and unyielding. She didn't look back at him, but Marcus didn't need her to. He knew she was leading him somewhere, and it was up to him to follow. He pushed himself harder, his legs burning with the effort. The dark walls of the canyon loomed on either side, narrowing as they moved. Marcus could barely keep up, but he forced his body to comply. The fear that gripped him was sharper than anything he had ever felt. The unknown was closing in on him, not just the physical danger, but the crushing weight of everything that had happened in the past few days. "I don't understand," Marcus gasped, trying to catch his breath. "Who's after us?" "What is this?" Lyra's voice rang out from ahead, still calm, still focused. "They are the hunters, beings who seek to control the power that resides within you. They have been searching for you, Marcus, and now they will stop at nothing to ensure you never reach your full potential." Marcus's heart pounded. Hunters. The thought of being pursued by something so ruthless made him feel small, insignificant. But Lyra's words echoed in his mind. You were chosen. She had said it again, earlier, with such certainty. He didn't feel like anything special. He felt like a man on the run, trying to keep up with the world that seemed to make no sense. As they ran, the ground began to shift, the familiar rock turning into something else, something smooth and polished. Marcus glanced down at his feet and saw a faint glow beneath the surface of the earth. The canyon walls seemed to hum with energy, the air thickening with something electric. "What is this place?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper, his eyes scanning the glowing surface beneath them. "It is a sacred place," Lyra replied, not breaking her stride. "A place where your power can be awakened. But we must reach it before they catch up." Marcus's confusion deepened. Power? His power? What did she mean by that? He had always thought of himself as an ordinary man, a pilot, a survivor. He had never imagined he could be part of something greater. But as the glow intensified beneath their feet, something within him stirred. It was like a pull, a quiet beckoning that grew stronger the closer they got to the heart of the canyon. Lyra's movements became more deliberate, as if she could sense it too. They came to a stop at the edge of a massive stone structure, an ancient platform carved into the side of the canyon. The structure was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen, made of materials that seemed to shimmer in the low light. Strange symbols covered its surface, symbols that looked both alien and familiar, as though they had been waiting for him. Lyra turned to face Marcus, her expression unreadable. "This is where it begins," she said. "This is where you will unlock the power that has always been inside you." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. "I don't know if I can do this." Lyra stepped closer, her eyes softening as she placed a hand on his arm. "You already have, Marcus. You just don't know it yet. This power is not just about strength. It is about understanding, about connection. The universe has been guiding you here. All you need to do is trust. Trust! The word hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. How could he trust something he didn't understand? How could he believe in the power she claimed he had when he didn't even know who or what he was supposed to be? He looked at her, at the quiet confidence in her gaze, and for the first time, he felt a small spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a mistake. Maybe this was where he was meant to be. Lyra took a step back, nodding toward the stone platform. You must activate it.
Focus on the energy, Marcus. Close your eyes and let it in.
Trust your instincts. Let the universe guide you. Marcus swallowed hard. His hands were shaking, his heart racing in his chest. He didn't know what to expect, but he knew he had no other choice. He took a deep breath, closing his eyes and trying to push away the fear. For the first time since the crash, he focused not on the past, not on the dangers around them, but on the moment before him. The air around him seemed to hum, the energy palpable. It vibrated through his body, making his skin tingle, his pulse quicken. At first, nothing happened, but then, slowly it began. A warmth spread through his chest, a fire that was both familiar and alien. It felt as though something deep inside him was awakening, stretching, reaching for something beyond his understanding. The symbols on the platform began to glow, their lines pulsating with energy. Marcus could feel them drawing him in, pulling him closer. He opened his eyes, and for the briefest moment, everything around him seemed to blur. The world was no longer the rocky canyon he had been running through. Instead, he was floating in space, surrounded by stars, planets, and galaxies that seemed to stretch on forever. He could see them all. Every star, every planet, every piece of the universe. It was as if the very fabric of reality was unfolding before him, revealing secrets he had never known existed. He felt a presence beside him, not Lyra, but something else, something ancient and wise. It whispered to him, its voice both inside his mind and outside, as though the universe itself was speaking. You are not just a man. You are the bridge, the one who will connect all that has been lost. You are the key to the future. The voice faded, but the words lingered in his mind, echoing through his consciousness. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest as he tried to make sense of what had just happened. His head was spinning, but somehow, he knew what he had to do. He didn't understand it fully, but he understood enough to know that this was his moment. With a deep breath, he focused on the energy around him, channeling it through his body. It flowed through his limbs, filling him with power, with knowledge. He could feel it shifting, changing him in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. His mind raced, processing everything he had just seen, everything he had just felt. And then, it happened. A burst of light exploded from the platform, blinding him for a moment. When the light faded, Marcus stood there, trembling, but changed. He felt different, stronger, more alive than ever before. It wasn't just the power that flowed through him. It was the understanding, the knowledge that had been unlocked within him. He wasn't just Marcus anymore. He was something else, something greater. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes wide with awe.
You did it. Marcus looked at her, his voice barely above a whisper.
What now? Now, Lyra said, her voice filled with purpose. We fight. Before he could ask anything more, the rumbling sound returned. This time, it was not just a distant echo. It was real, and it was close. The hunters had found them. They were here. Marcus's pulse quickened as he stood beside Lyra, ready to face whatever came next. He wasn't just a man anymore. He was the key, and now it was time to unlock his true potential.